So it's strange because we recorded the last episode that dropped in person. And I had my good friend Allison Gordon sitting beside me, who lives down the street from me. And it's so rare that I get to interview a good friend. Actually, that's not true. I've interviewed many, many friends, but Allison is someone who I've smoked joints with since I was 15 years old, right? And I'm only 35. Lulu, it's not true. So, but today is really cool because, we have done some of these shows before in the past where we bring on someone that I don't know at all and we get to learn about one another live. But before we bring on our guest today, I have to do just some awful, like, I am really shitty at self promotion, and I love to be on social media, but I hate the me part. And unfortunately, there's a part of it that I really need to sort of suck up and be very proud of. And so Kind Magazine, full disclosure, and I've said it many times, I'm a director with Kind. It's one of my fractional roles here in Canada. Um, but I love Josh, and I love, do you know Shabazz? Do you know Shabazz Kara?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know Shabazz? All right,
I
so
do.
Baz, we don't have to embarrass you. She
I do.
does
I
in
do.
fact
I
know
do.
who you are. So I said offline, apparently we have a mutual friend. And so Shabazz is a young man who, he's beyond a good friend. Certainly somebody that I took a liking to many years ago now. And I don't know if mentor is the word or just the old and gray, guy in his life. But I love that dude. And we worked together at Kind Magazine. So
Oh, I
we
love
did
that.
to the world. Kind Magazine is really the Canadian culture magazine, and it's Canadian cannabis culture magazine. And so they did this spread, Time for Kitchen Positivity. And
Oh,
so it was a
great.
really cool spread. And, we had a great time, and we did some, coconut crusted shrimp, and, like, the shots are great. And Ben Kaplan did a tremendous job. And so I was very, very, very grateful. And of course, like, my signature dish, which is one of them anyways, which is fried chicken.
Who doesn't
And
love fried chicken?
yeah, this is like, it is just sexy AF. But something really cool happened around 420, which was, for the first time. And I had the song, it's about time, it's about damn time, as my in my reel, saying, like, it's about fucking time you guys, like, shared one of my recipes in High Times. But the truth is that I'm incredibly grateful. And it was one of those moments where it's like, I think the holy grail moment will be when we really do have all of our cannabis culture on mainstream, where, Aspen Food and Wine certainly showed us when they had Kitchen Toke and other cannabis brands present last year in Aspen. And so, when I think the holy grail moment for me is when I'm doing an interview for Food and Wine on my cannabis infused food and or beverage. But this was a really cool moment. And I'll tell the world why. Because you hear me talk often about the importance of redefining what we know to be cannabis food and beverage. And it's not just, hey, give me another gummy with another, food coloring, and we've got a new penis mold coming out here in Toronto, or in Canada, where, listen, at least Mike Dax and Ilya from Lush Brands are doing something a little bit different. But still, I think we need to get to a point where table stakes are healthier cannabis food and beverage. So for me to see, my signature dish, literally my signature dish, which has 2 ingredients, make its way into High Times 420 edition, was really cool. And this is my chicken kale meatballs,
I
which,
love that.
as you can guess, has, 2 ingredients. So anyways, it's a really cool time right now in cannabis, and there's a lot of states that are coming online, or some that are coming online. One I'm incredibly excited for. As we know, and the short story as we lead in here is I was going to Hall of Flowers and was denied entrance into the United States of America, being a Canadian citizen, paying taxes in the fucking in
Boo.
the U.S. Excuse me, being a
Boo.
U.S. citizen, paying in the U.S., have a social security number and everything. And I was denied entrance. Long story short, I have a US passport now, and I'm really fucking excited to see and highlight people like our next guest, who is in New York City, who has this crazy, and to go into her, her LinkedIn profile is to go down this, open up Pandora's box for all intents and purposes on UI UX experiences, because this is unbelievable, the amount of experience that our next guest has. But Lulu Tsui is the co-founder and chief experience officer of On The Revel. And there's something, and I took it from the site, where industry meets culture. So I wrote that down. I definitely want to drill into that. But also the president of Cannabis Media Council, which it was news to me that New York has a Cannabis Media Council, or that the United States does, and I can't wait to drill into that too. As I said, Lulu is I said it offline, but we know today's going to be very special. And how do we know that? Because Lulu comes by way of the fantabulousness that is Zoe Wilder. And so anyone who knows cannabis in North America knows that Zoe Wilder is the shit. At least I think she is. And so Lulu, you come very highly recommended, my friend. And so welcome to In the Weeds. You are a rock star.
Thank you, Chef Jordan. I'm really excited it's my pleasure to be on your show. Anyone that works with food has a very special place in my heart. And again, like you mentioned, Zoe is she's like this fairy god, mother, auntie, friend, just this beautiful human being that is ethereal almost. So again, same thing. Anyone that she connects me with, it's just instant love, instant connection, instant support.
Isn't that amazing how good people connect with good people? Good people are surrounded by good people. And you're absolutely right. She is that instant rubber stamp. And I will share with you that, and I've shared with her, one-on-one, that without even having, she's not someone that I've had the opportunity to hug. And I'm a hugger, right? Like, I'm a very affectionate person. And so I'm so thankful for her. She really has impacted my life without even having met her in person yet. And so it's really quite something. So tell me, just out of curiosity, why food? Where is your connection with food?
Well, I'm Chinese, Asian culture, and everything is around food. So the way that we eat is always family style. The traditions of recipes is passed down from generation to generation. It's never written. It's always like I'm like, Mom, what do you put in the dumpling? She's like, oh, just a dash of this or a dash of that. And I was just actually talking to a friend yesterday. My earliest memories of my mom was actually helping her make dumplings. And I was probably 5 years old, but I had two cleavers and I was just chopping up lettuce for her, chopping up all the ingredients for her. And, it kind of just speaks to the fact that I wish we gave kids more opportunity to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can do things like have knife skills when they're young, turn on the stove, like cook, give them, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in the United States, it's very like, it's so protective of your kids that you kind of almost don't give them that benefit of the doubt to be curious or to learn or to
Yeah,
X,
we
Y.
baby. I mean, listen, I lived in the U.S. for a long time. Like, for me, it's, my mom's from Syracuse, and I feel like we were kind of raised in a lot of ways almost American, if I'm doing in air quotes. Overprotective, no question. I'll give you a perfect example. I have an 18 and a half year old. Jonah will kill me for saying it, but like I say, 18 and a half going on 16, and my 15-year-old, she's actually 15 today. She's 15
Oh,
going on
happy
22.
birthday.
Yeah, Jamie, happy birthday, sweetie. I
Happy
love you.
birthday.
And so we're going away, my wife and I, on Thursday, and I'm a little bit nervous for them to be home with us off the continent. So I've just said, like, we are the party house. Like, I know he smokes joints and his friends smoke joints. I'm cool with it. Like,
Yeah.
he's a sophomore in college. And so that was, ladies and gentlemen, that was my wife, who obviously, after 30 years of marriage, still does not listen and say, yes, I remember you telling me you had a podcast before. But it's all good. It's real life, real drama, right? Anyways, you know what? I digress, because for me, and I wanted to get to this point, you brought up food, and so culturally, like, I come from a Jewish background, and so we do everything over food,
Mhm.
right? And so, like, is your memory growing up very much the same? We celebrate over food, and we mourn over food, and we, do everything over food, right? Similar?
100%, 100%. And then, for certain holidays, we eat specific things because the
Right.
sound of that word means, we have a lot of these, what do they call ideograms, or
Right. Yeah.
where one word, same sound means different things. So
Yeah.
everything, even our food, medicine is around food. And I know you're, with your background, going through your journey, every single thing we put in our body has some type of element around it. So it's very much tied to, for feeding us, for nourishment, but as well as medicine. So
100%. And you know what's so ironic about this conversation is that last night I had wontons. I made it for my wife and my two kids, and I don't eat them because the wonton wrappers are not gluten free. And
mhm.
I immediately had a reaction. Like, immediately I felt it in my bones, like I felt it in my skin. And it's one of those things where and I've said this a couple times recently, where I feel like we've become almost conditioned to feeling badly after we eat certain things. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, I've used the McDonald's example. Like, you wake up, someone says, I'm going to go have an egg McMuffin. I know I'll be sitting on the toilet in a half an hour. It's that
Yeah.
sort of thing. It's just weird to me.
No,
So
I'm in my 40s now, so I definitely notice that there's things that I used to, like, be a glutton over, that just does
yeah,
not even agree anymore. So that's just, I think, comes with age, and comes with, us actually learning about our bodies and understanding what optimally affects us, and what doesn't. So
that's right. Amen to that. Okay, so let's get to On The Revel, because I am extremely curious, and this is why I said to you going in, it's so easy to come into these conversations when I know someone really well and when I don't know them at all, because I'm incredibly curious about what you're doing. So New York is a state that, well, why don't you describe it for the audience? Where is New York at in its journey? Medical, recreational? Maybe you can just sort of give us a snapshot in terms of where New York is currently.
So sure. We had a medical program here in New York that just didn't really lift off. I don't think there was a lot of support or education, or even announcement to New Yorkers, based on the number or the population that we have, in New York, versus the number of medical doctors versus the number of patients. It just never really took off. We passed the MRTA. We are actually in the middle of a program.
What is that? What is that?
There was two bills that were proposed in New York. One was backed by Cuomo, it was the CRTA. Another one was the MRTA, and the MRTA is I would say it's like the social conscious, people friendly bill, versus the CRTA, which was, I think, following much more around corporate cannabis. So, and the MRTA passed, and one thing that we're very proud of is that 50% of all licenses of cannabis operational licenses will have to be dedicated to social equity. So there's no other state that has, proclaimed and written this into law. So we are very excited that this is definitely to the spirit of the MRTA and what we're trying to do, which is create generational wealth, which is to uh, right a lot of the wrongs with the war on drugs, which is giving people opportunity for small and mid-sized companies versus all of the large MSOs. So we're just, I'm very excited. On the Revel is very excited, and what we've been trying to do with our education platform is to provide as much information to folks that are interested in the legal cannabis opportunities, whether as an entrepreneur or someone who's looking for a job or someone who's interested in ancillary. And I've never really seen New York so excited over anything. Like a lot of the times, New Yorkers are like, not easily impressed or not easily excitable about things, but there is definitely a wave of excitement, a lot of interest, curiosity, openness. So it's a really special time here in New York, and especially that COVID is over and it's springtime. There's just like a lot of really positive energy that's coming towards cannabis and emanating from the cannabis community.
Curious, it's going to be tied together, but his name just sort of popped in, and I'm sure you know him. Where does Vladimir sit in sort of in the importance of what's going on in creating that and carving that path for legacy people to become successful in that legal market?
So I have mad respect for Vlad from Happy Monkey. That's who you're talking
Happy
about.
Monkey,
Yep.
Stu Zackham, we love you, Stu.
So the
We
reason
love
why
you,
I have
Stu. Oh, yes, we do.
the reason why I have a lot of respect for Vlad is because he was the first. He was the first to create an environment where different types of people could come together and celebrate the passion for cannabis. There were businessmen doing deals there. There were DJs. There was, a lot of what we talk about in terms of culture meeting business and business meeting culture. Vlad created a room where different people who love the plant could come together. And I'm going to say he had the balls to do that. There was not anyone really actively doing that. And now that he set that precedent, everybody else got the courage to do that. And that's what New York is about. New York is about, let's just do this shit and we'll apologize later. You never wait for someone to give you permission. And that's why I have deep respect for Vlad. Is he did something and he successfully, became a thought leader in the conversation about legacy coming and getting their place in this market in New York, which is a very important discussion. We've seen what happens when you don't do that in California, and I think he's always been a supporter of ours. He used to come to our events when we first started. We would go to his events, and it's that type of showing up for each other. Doesn't matter what backgrounds, what race, what religion, what socioeconomic status. It's the fact that there's a passion for something, there's an opportunity to build something with people. And, he's a friend and a colleague and a soldier and an advocate. And I'm really, really grateful that, we came up around the same time in New York.
One love, right? I mean, it's so cliche, but it's true. I mean, it's one love, and the plant has pulled so many of us together. Amazing humans. I have to ask you, so walk me through, like, what's your connection to cannabis?
Okay, so my connection to cannabis is a little bit different than most, I'm going to say. So I was born in China, northern China, and my parents brought me over to the States with them. So I'm first generation to Eugene, Oregon, of all places. I consider like the Pacific Northwest almost like we're like the Canadians of, of the US almost. Free people, right? So what was really interesting was when we came to the States, my parents had no idea what Americans were like because we're from northern China. It wasn't like Hong Kong or Shanghai. It was just, northern China. And they just realized that everyone that took care of us that helped us acclimate, that babysat me, that taught us English, that taught us culture, were actually cannabis growers. Everyone, I don't know if you've been to Eugene, Oregon. It's still like a hippie utopia haven, where cannabis has always been part of the culture, the Grateful Dead. There was a lot of people coming back from the ashrams for yoga, like all the things. Energy heal. I was raised by energy healers. The books I used to get were like Women Who Run with Wolves when I turned 13, or The Red Tent. So it was just that type of vibe, which I think has become a lot more popular and mainstream these days. So that's what I, grew up with. That's what I ran away from. That's what I'm coming back to again. So it's like the prodigal daughter has returned. But when I was curious about cannabis, because it was just everywhere, it was around me, it was my aunt that procured for me. So she went, found the best weed that she could find, sat me down and said, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this with me. I'm going to make sure you're safe, and proceeded to give me 8 bong hits. Because the first 2 hits, I remember, I'm like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything. I didn't know that sometimes that happens, when someone starts for the first time. And 6 bong hits later, I'm completely in a different dimension. I'm learning what music looks like in 3-dimensional terms. She's keeping me safe and playing like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd for me. So that, I think, my first cannabis experience was pretty fucking cool. And then, when I got the munchies, she took me to IHOP and got me the chocolate chip pancakes, which today I still love. So that was kind of my
It's a rite of passage almost.
yeah. So that's when I became I guess a consumer of the product.
We refer to ourselves as high functioning potheads here on In the Weeds.
100%,
Yep.
100%. And I think, we are probably a different demographic that's been portrayed in the war on drugs, like the lazy stoner. I think, and what's interesting about New York is I think there's been a huge cannabis culture here. Most people didn't talk about it because New York has always been such a I think drinking and cocaine type of, amphetamine, speedy type of energy here. But cannabis has always been here, but no one really talked about it. And now you can't walk down the street without smelling some pretty dank weed everywhere.
I remember 13 years old, we took the train in from New City, went into Washington Square Park, scored mushrooms and smoked pot. My brother lives in Brooklyn. So for me, it's like, it's being different than here. But if ever I went to New York and wanted something, there was always someone around to score from, because there were always a ton of people, no matter their socioeconomic, status, where they live. It's the same thing today. Everyone fucking smokes pot. I mean, it's just, or consumes cannabis, as I should say, politically correct, politically correctly. But, the truth of the matter is, I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but a lot of what I talk about is sort of going right back to food and how important it is to our cultures. It's much easier for me to introduce cannabis to my dad, who's got a brain tumor at this age, although he did, smoke joints that, I found, I know he has, sporadically, but never like me and my siblings. But it's much easier to hand him a quality food stuff or beverage and say, consume this, right? Because it's a more familiar way of consuming anything. They do that, as we established. We celebrate, we mourn. So, anyways, I think it's really, that's why I sort of, I joke, but it's true, however you consume cannabis, I mean, it's medicine, truly, whether you know it or not. So I'm curious, just going into that, I wrote down, how do we educate here? And as I'm talking and doing my research on the Revel, which I want to do a deeper dive here, but it seems to me like I know Shabazz is going to New York a ton, and I just haven't been able to get there, and I'll certainly be around, but I feel as though, and the end result is twofold. How do we get people together to educate and to network so that we can all sort of help one another and be this collective and community that we deserve to be, and weed out all the bullshit and bullshit people, right? But in that bro culture. But is that a fair statement that On The Revel is really all about? I know you said it here where industry meets culture, but is that really what it's about? It's sort of networking and sort of getting these people together.
100%. And food and music and all of the things that I'd say cannabis always aggregates around itself, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um, and I think, the difference for us is that both Jacoby and I came from the supply chain side versus
Yeah.
kind of the consumer brand side. So,
Mm-hmm.
he came up from the Colorado market with Mindful, which is one of the first vertically integrated operators out of there. He started off as a janitor, and he's a math major, but he started off, and then he slowly started learning and offering, ways to kind of make things more efficient with the grow thing, so he actually just applied himself and saw things and, provided solutions. So that's how he came up through the, up the chain. I came up from the Washington market on the extraction, processing, post-processing side, on the equipment side. So Jacoby and I come from that background, which is like behind the scenes.
Right.
And one of the things that, New York didn't have at the time, this was 2016, there were, meetups around advocacy, there was meetups around investment, but there was kind of a little bit of mystery of like, what exactly is the cannabis industry and what's happening behind? Because all people saw was like $2 billion, $40 billion. And, we were back here going like, where are they getting these numbers? Because we don't even have a system of being able to like track data that's consistent
Right.
across, platforms or states or anything. So what was important for us was to just start having people that we met along our path that we thought were doing great things. We thought that shared the same ethos that, cannabis can be inclusive, diverse, and should have opportunities for everyone. It's a brand new industry. Everyone should be included. So we started bringing people that, we weren't experts on certain things, but we definitely met experts along the way that were just fucking cool, that we wanted to work with, that our friends were working with. And we just wanted to bring them to New York and give New York real talk, because that's what was so needed.
I love that. And it's funny. I totally, I don't know why I blocked this out of memory, but it's pre-pandemic. It's hard to remember events. But I remember we went to New York for Fashion Week, and Kitchen Toke, there was an event with Prabal Gurung. And it was so much fun. And it was so interesting to see this sort of, cannabis and fashion coming together. It was so incredible to see. Now, granted, I felt slightly out of my element, a little bit. I don't know why I did. I think it was because I wasn't wearing a chef coat and apron. That would have made me a little bit more comfortable if I had been cooking, but I was sitting at a table. It's so foreign to me. I was total fish out of water, but it was really incredible to see that where cannabis meets culture. And it's funny, I just got like, really, it's exactly what had happened that night. So you come from this incredible UX sort of background. And so when we talk about this user experience, how important or how much of your background in creating UX, because I assume, seeing your background, I just want to establish it, that was on the tech side of things, right? Those were not for in-person experiences, correct?
Correct, but it translates very easily, because
Talk to us about that.
the user experience is learning about, the group of people that you're trying to design something for. You learn about their goals, their motivations, how they work, and then you design tools and products and services around that. You don't try to make them learn something new that doesn't fit with what they're used to, because that's just a friction point. You're going to just design crappy pieces of things that no one's really interested in. But if you start learning about your audience, if you start learning about what's important to them, that's how we do our programming. And it just makes more sense to us, you know, like we want to learn and provide the best actionable conferences and events because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people to understand the reality of what it means to come into cannabis, right? Like it can be amazing. It can also be crazy. I mean, look at California. There's a lot of shakedown that's happening. So
It's
our
a
goal,
fucking shit show.
it
It's
is,
a shit show.
yeah, it is. And but people need to hear that also, you know, and I think New Yorkers can take that. You know, like I've lived on both coasts. Sometimes it's hard to say, tell West Coast people bad news. It's not received well. You know, New Yorkers have suffered together from very many things and, you know, natural disasters, 9/11, like they're used to hearing it straight up. So what's important for us is to provide as much transparent information and
Yeah.
knowledge as
Yeah.
possible so people
Yeah.
can make an informed decision.
So if the goal is to educate and do it in a social environment, what's what's you mentioned, you know, learning the crossover there is really sort of learning what's important to your consumer. So what is important to the On The Revel consumer or user, and that you are looking to educate them on? Like what kind of information are they craving?
So, you know, previously, like we started this 6 years ago. So, you know,
Mhm.
back then it was a lot of like, okay, well, what are the things that we learned, Jacoby, you know, and I that we found really, really interesting because we're all nerds. Like he's a math nerd, I'm a design nerd. Peter Mercado, he's a neuroscientist, so we've got a science nerd. You know, we we just really wanted to, you know, figure out at first what, you know, was kind of throwing things against the wall. You know, we brought
Right.
in, we what we
Sure.
like to do is we pick a theme and then we'll bring in experts from different viewpoints that can talk about that theme. So we had one like cannabis in the body, we had one for vape gate. You know, we right now what we've been doing is a lot of information on we had our first full day conference last November called Revelry, and that was all about licensing. And it was all about people who'd gone through licensing from other markets,
Right.
talking about their experience, predatory practices, all of those things. And now we're being a little bit more responsive as our program rolls out, like what type of information, you know, we hear like, what about this? What about
Mm.
this? All these
Of
questions.
course.
We're trying to, you know, provide some answers to some of those questions because there's so many unknowns right now.
And I guess it's just evolved. And that's really the answer over 6 years. What people, the information people are craving, I imagine has just evolved and is constantly and probably real time. You're having to respond to some of it, you know, based on what's going on in the world.
Yeah, it is not easy. Our
No.
run of show keeps, you know, updated probably like 2 days before the actual event. You know,
I love when that happens.
so.
There's a saying in Hebrew, it's Hebrew or Yiddish, whatever it is. No, it's Hebrew. I think Manish Tanara, like, why should this day be different than any other day? And that's the fucking events world, right? Like we're talking about it with Kind Summer Fair, July 5th and 6th, happening in Toronto, down at the Cabana at Rebel Nightclub. It's going to be fucking amazing.
I
Are you
think
coming in?
I think Shabazz invited me to that. I might have to
Oh, you
like
need to
fly
come.
over the border and say what's up.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm coming back from Europe for it, as a matter of fact.
nice.
So it's going to be amazing.
Wait, what
So
dates were those? I'm sorry, say
July
that.
5th and 6th. Yeah, it's going to
Oh,
be it's going to be amazing, amazing, amazing.
okay. Double
So
check, check.
so you talk about, you know, on your site, it's really cool, and I love the saying like dope people. I love it. Like it really resonated with me. Only because I guess I've always yearned to be a dope person my whole life. Okay, so On The Revel's Dope People online membership community. Can you sort of tell us about that? What goes on in this membership community?
Yeah, so that's our repository of information, resources. We started a directory. You know, Jacoby's going for a manufacturing license in New York. I'm going for a retail license. So we'll be, you know, putting things in there that we're learning, that have been helpful for us. Right now, you know, our partners from Point Seven Group did a first pass at application strategy for folks. We're going to be putting some templates in there as well. So it's pretty much, it's free. It's our membership, community.
Right.
We have a Discord channel called Dope People as well. So that's the place, members get first access, discounted tickets, first time, first information for anything that we release. It's like a thank you for supporting us, and a thank you for sharing with us, and being, wanting to build this very inclusive community in New York for cannabis.
You know what stood out for me? And you just mentioned it, was the directory page, a list of companies we trust.
Yes, 100%.
Fucking
100%.
love that, Lulu. Like, love that. Is that it's Jacoby, you said, is your partner?
Jacoby Holland, he's my co-founder for On The Revel.
And so who's the genius behind these little phrases that I'm pulling from your website? Is that you?
I'm gonna have to say it's probably Peter.
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 Well, Peter.
Peter Mercado, yeah.
Dude.
Props to Peter.
Fucking A, man. Like, honestly, like this shit, the directory page, a list of companies we trust.
Yeah, because like the one thing I really find kind of ironic is I feel like in cannabis, no one does their due diligence. Have you noticed that? It's like, if you're gonna buy a house, if you're gonna like invest in some type of tech company, you would look everything up, you would like get referrals, you would do all of the paperwork. But with cannabis, like no one does that. And I find that really, really strange. Just having this conversation, I'm like, you invested in this company in this location, that they are having a drought, right? Like, that the water is going to be gone soon, but you're going to, okay, I don't get that, but they're like, oh, it was such a great pitch. I'm like, okay.
There are a lot of things right now in the world that I don't understand. I'll just put my hand up and say, and I was going to, it's funny, one of the things that I was going to say in the introduction is, this is another in a long list of shows where I'm the dumbest person in the room. Like, truly, with your incredible, and incredibly impressive background, I knew that you would be dropping bombs. And honest, when I was going through the Revel website, it was very clear that some significant thought has gone in here. So I need to talk about, you talked about your membership. You mentioned podcast. Do you have a podcast?
Yeah, we have a podcast also called Dope
Tell
People.
us.
So we transitioned from online events at the beginning of the pandemic into, our podcast and our YouTube channel. So essentially what kind of very much what we're doing now, we just wanted to focus on the folks that we met and that our first degrees told us about. So everyone that we're connected with is our first degree or first degree's first degree. And I think that's also been something that's been very special. Whenever we do our events, we think about the programming first, and then we think about the perfect speaker that could talk about that. So we've never done a call for speakers. So we're not like the other cannabis groups that are just like, hey, pay us $10,000 to speak about this. Ours is more like, hey, this person, we heard from so-and-so that they're amazing at this topic. Let's reach out, have a chat with them, learn about them, listen, like research them, look at all the things online about them, and then see if we want them to be a speaker.
And that's why people have confidence in you and your brand, obviously. And I go back to, and I don't say it lightly, I don't think, and knowing, that the people that Zoe represents and does business with, I can say with some certainty, like, holy shit, like, you guys are obviously, the two of you, building something incredibly special to have the support of the people. And I've asked around, like, the moment I asked Shabazz, because I saw you were connected, I'm like, do you know Lulu? It's like, oh my God, you need to tell her we're brothers. But it just speaks volumes to how we really do, good people find one another, especially in this industry. So I'm curious, you have this amazing UX background. So we've talked about the importance of finding what's important to that consumer. When the pandemic hit, I'm certain that you had to, and I hate the word pivot, but let's just use it for argument's sake, but you had to pivot to virtual experiences, correct?
100%. Yep.
How'd that go?
I think it was.
How'd that go? And do you think there's a place for it moving forward?
I think it was definitely a learning experience for us. Like all of this, I never thought in a million years I would be. I never thought I would be an event producer. I never thought I would be speaking, on a podcast or hosting a podcast or any of this. I was very comfortable being behind the scenes, doing all of the
Right.
things.
Right.
But I'd say it was probably for us, it was very successful in the fact that we were able to switch quickly and pivot into something else and still remain in contact with the industry. That was something we always wanted to do, was never lose touch of what was happening in the industry. And I was lucky enough that, with the ancillary business side of the root science group that I was involved with on the processing extraction side, I was able to visit and do site installations with them across different markets. So I was able to travel and connect with folks, not just within one state. I got to meet folks in other states, and that's how I was able to grow my network. So we were able to, speak to friends in Barcelona, speak to friends like all over the US, and just also keep in touch because, it was such a weird time and everyone was not knowing what the fuck was going on. And, that was our consistency. We did this every Thursday. We did this, so that was a way for us to keep our team moving forward and also to keep in contact with our friends and in the industry.
So have we grown tired of it? Do you think there's a place for virtual at all moving forward?
I think we're all tired of just, the Zoom fatigue, all of it
Fuck.
fatigue. And I think everyone's just really excited to get back into seeing people again, you know?
You know, I'm going to ask you this question. I drafted a post. I haven't released it yet for LinkedIn about the future of events. And I don't mind sort of sharing it with you because I would love your perspective on it. It's, and you just spoke to it. I don't believe that it's enough of a reason. People are not saying anymore, man, I miss getting together with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason that I'm going to go to this conference. In my opinion, I think things need to change on the event side a little bit. If you look what George and Kim have done with MJ Unpacked, or
Mm-hmm.
you look at what we are doing in July, or you look at what ICBC, what Alex did in Barcelona, and now coming up to, in Germany, these are the outliers and hopefully becoming the norm where they're thinking outside the box a little bit. They're doing things a little bit different where it's not just, hey, let's set up trade show booths and have people walk around. I just think that has almost fallen by the wayside. What do you think?
I completely agree. I feel like, cannabis business before it went legal was never done like that.
Right.
You know, Cannabis
Yeah.
business. I mean, I come from hippie legacy, so it was always around me. It was done through sharing meals. It was done through taking a walk, and it was done through going fishing together. It was done through all of these activities because that's when energy never lies, right? If you're going to vibe with someone, if you should be doing business with someone based on
I could smoke a joint with you. 100%. No question.
and if we smoked a
You know?
joint, like that frequency tunes even sharper, you
Yeah,
know.
of course,
But
100%.
and I've never, just so going to these trade shows, I was just like, God, this is all just being an attendee, also being part of a booth, an exhibitor. Like I just most of the business dealings happens in the suites anyway,
Absolutely. But
So
that's what George and Kim did really well, where they almost curated this matchmaking opportunity, right?
mhm.
So for people that are looking for money and money that are, that's looking to invest. And so it's an
I
and for
would I
me,
would I would give one.
please,
I would love for them, MJ Unpacked,
please.
to really bring in some people of color
Okay.
that was completely missing
Okay.
in New York.
Okay.
So I would say we have so
On
much.
what level? So walk me through that because I didn't go to New York. So, you're talking about just people that are showing. There was no BIPOC present, like a
It was
representation.
some, but if you look at the demographic of New York, I feel
I
like
have
your
this as a
events,
note.
Yeah, your events that you have in whatever city should mimic that of the
Indicative,
demographic
absolutely.
of your city, right? New York is very diverse.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, it's not a miss or anything. I'm just saying in the future, like reach out more,
Right.
and we
Yeah.
did an event with we actually held a boot camp. We held a boot camp for legacy operators right before Engine
Right.
Impact.
Amazing.
So there is a lot of opportunity here to reach out to other folks than just the white entrepreneurs. We've got amazing schools here that you could reach out to for potential entrepreneurs. Medgar Evers College. We've got a lot of, folks in legacy that would love an opportunity to have a booth or love an opportunity to have, tickets. Would love an opportunity to shine, host, do smaller parties, things like that.
So, as a presenting middle-aged white dude, I have a lot of time for these conversations, because if I don't, who the fuck is going to? Right?
Right.
Like, I have to give my platforms for this opportunity. And I'm so glad that this is where we're going, because, you've never been to Toronto?
I haven't.
Okay. Toronto is New York for all intents and purposes. The population isn't similar, but we are top 5 metropolis in North America with our 7 million people in the Greater Toronto area.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge city. Toronto looks a lot like Chicago with our waterfront, but it's what our waterfront could have been, is what I describe as Chicago. But what you're going to be blown away at, especially in fucking Chinatown, when you see how big and robust this is. But we are so multicultural
I
here.
love that.
That is what we are about. When we say, oh, Canada, there is no such thing as, if you talk about Canadian cuisine, because we're so cultural, it's so hard to disseminate sort of what that means exactly. I would talk about seasonality and local. If I had to talk about Canadian food, it would be more, geographical and seasonal than anything. But because we're so multicultural, I couldn't even tell you what Canadian food is. You are going to be blown away at the different pockets, like from Greek town to Chinatown to, to the Jewish area where I live just south of, where you're going to see on Saturday, just like in Jerusalem, a bunch of people with black hats walking around. So it's really diverse. And I'm so glad you brought that up. So let's talk about this. How do we make things in New York? I know that On The Revel's goal is to make your events inclusive and representative, but how do we then, and George I love, so how do we get the George Jages of the world and others who are going to throw events, especially in New York, to consider what you're talking about? How do we bridge that gap? What do
We'd
we do
love for
differently?
him to come to one of our events, like come and see what we're doing, right? Come and see the faces that we're bringing. Come and see because I found like a lot of Californians came to New York, right? So I don't know of a lot of New Yorkers that were part of it. And maybe I'm wrong. I only went for one day.
Okay.
Part of it meaning part of the programming or part of the exhibitors.
Yeah.
So I think also, you're in someone else's house, right? Like learn who's part of the family.
Well said. You're in someone else's house. Learn who's part of the family. Learn who has a seat at the table. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of seeing is like a lot of folks from outside are trying to come into New York, and they're like, oh, well, this is how you do it, and that is how you do it, and this is my background, this is my pedigree, I've been in cannabis for like 15 years. I'm like, that's cool, dude, but come in with a little bit of humility. Come in, listen and learn. Because I'll tell you, I've seen enough grows where you hired an expert from Colorado, from California, who've never dealt with East Coast humidity, and your $10 million facility just is ruined for the next year. So
I get it. Have you ever heard Jamie Pearson talk about roots versus suits? Do you know, like, so what you're talking about, it's so incredible. And I referenced it earlier today too, but so Jamie, she's the president and CEO of Bang Chocolate, and she's one
yeah,
of my favorite.
Florida, right?
No,
Florida.
she lives in Montana. But their Bang is represented by Indiva here in Canada, and they've
Mhm.
got a ton of brands, Bang chocolate bars out in the U.S. and across
Yeah,
the
I'm
globe.
familiar with them. I thought they were based or originated in Florida, but maybe I'm
You could be right. You could be right. I could be wrong. But what was really cool was, that discussion, exactly what you're talking about, how, the roots versus suits. And it's not necessarily the legacy versus legal, and I don't want to, rehash it necessarily, but I think what you're talking about is so critical to listening to those who have been part of the game all along, allowing these people to have a voice, because they are the ones who have been, as you say, growing in this, in this humidity or in this region, and or distributing in this region, and have a sense of the consumer and what that consumer is actually looking for.
100%. And and I'm not saying like, oh, New York's on lockdown. I'm saying is like people with expertise come in, listen and learn, find the
Right.
good people you want to work with. Because in New York, you need a guy.
Yeah.
Like to get
You
anything
need
done, you need a guy.
Everyone needs a guy, Lulu.
You know what I mean? Or a gal, a guy or a gal.
Or, I mean, the guy, in
Yeah.
air quotes, of course.
So,
Yes.
but if you're coming in, thinking that you're going to replicate some type of formula that you had with California, Oklahoma, Florida, it's not going to fly here because New York just is its own little entity. Like I wouldn't say little, it's just this entity. Consumer
Yeah.
buying is different. We are all delivery. We do not leave within a 4-block radius of our house.
Right.
Everything is local.
Yeah.
So, yes, these big MSOs and these large retailers will probably come in and do like these big, huge things and installations and experiences in
Yep.
Manhattan, in, like Times Square. Do you know how many times I've been to Times Square since I've lived here for 16 years?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, just just being humble, coming in, bring your expertise. That's so needed. There's a lot to learn about people's trials and tribulations and the happy things and the shitty things. Like that expertise definitely needs to come in, but you got to intermingle and interwove. Like it has to be interwoven with the fabric of what a specific location is about.
2 ears, one mouth, right? 2 ears, one mouth. God gave us 2 ears and one mouth. Let's listen
Exactly.
with the ears. So I saw something you were quoted. I think it was Benzinga in a Benzinga article, but I liked it in terms. I actually didn't read what you said because I saw the headline and said, I'm gonna ask that. So just give us, briefly, the good, the bad, the ugly. New York cannabis. The good, the bad, the ugly. What do you think? Good, the
Good
good.
is the opportunity of that everything like it brings like this. New York is like the center of entrepreneurship. Like this is the New York has the money. New
Right.
York is the money center of the United States. So it's really going to be interesting to see what this market becomes.
Yep.
Um, the bad is we really need to figure out how to get legacy. We need to figure out this bridge to get legacy opportunities to join in the regulated market.
Yep.
Um, the ugly is, oh man, there's just the
Bit too
snake oil
many.
salesmen are out in force,
Yeah.
having their
Yeah. But
wares, talking about how
yeah.
they're going to get people licenses, talking about guaranteeing licenses, talking about, oh, they know someone on the board and it's guaranteed, talking about, oh, well, we're a white group, but we really want to find a social equity partner to like partner with so we can do X, Y, and Z with
Of
them. I'm
course.
like, oh,
I totally. It's the snake oil salesman, and just, to be clear, these aren't, they transcend, I'm going to get you a license, and dribble into the, I know how
Predatory
to
lens.
infuse cannabis into food and beverage.
Yeah, all the
There's
way.
a lot of fucking players out there who, quite frankly, you know I have all the time in the world to educate. I have all the time in the world to speak to. I have all the time in the world to listen and answer their questions. What I don't have time for is a bunch of talking heads. I just don't.
Do your due diligence. Like cannabis is a small industry, even though it's big and spans many geographic locations. It is a very small industry. You can quickly call a couple of people and really understand if they're a good actor, if they fuck people over, if they're hiding behind their lawyers, if they don't even have experience in cannabis. Like it's surprisingly interesting how so many people do not do that research.
And I think, I go back full circle and say good people are surrounded by good people. And
100%.
that's why it was very easy for me to, to say, oh my God, Lulu, I love everything you're doing. And for me to, it was a very easy, oh my God, yes, please. I want Lulu on my show.
Oh, thank
This is
you.
going to be amazing. And truly you're amazing. And what you and Jacoby are doing really is so necessary, and to have and give a voice, giving a voice to those who may not necessarily have one is so key. And it's so incredible how way ahead of your time you were. And you're gonna just prosper, I know it, and I can't wait to come and support you in New York.
I love for, yeah, we're doing a Brooklyn block party.
When's that?
It should be August 28th. We're finalizing our venue, but I'll definitely let you know for sure when
Yeah,
that.
please,
Yeah,
I'll promote it
thank
on the
you.
show for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, so if anyone wants to work with On The Revel, or wants to attend a meetup, or just get in touch with you because you're awesome and a freaking rock star, how do they get in touch with you, and what's the best way to attend an event?
So, check out our website ontherevel.com. Sign up for a newsletter. You'll get notified. Sign up for Dope People. Just be part of our membership community.
Awesome.
You can always reach me at my email, which is Lulu at On The Revel. So LULU at ontherevel.com. Peter is our awesome social media engagement. So DM him, DM us. Yeah, we're very accessible, we're very approachable. So please reach out.
Favorite dumpling?
Ooh, it's got to be the shrimp chive,
Really?
or the vegetarian version of just shrimp with glass noodles and egg. Oh, sorry,
And,
chive with glass noodles and egg.
and do you cook? Do you like to cook?
I do. I love to cook. I don't have time to
Do you?
cook these days, but I do love to.
Amen. Yeah, I know it. I know it. Well, listen, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. This has been really a learned show for me. I love, for me, it's just so nice to see these nascent, we're still obviously very nascent here, but we're federally legal, regulated, and we've been legal for, it's hard to believe, what, 5 years or whatever now. And and I say this, it's so crazy. Fuck, I can't let you leave without asking you this question, but I am so critical of how we do things here until I go to Europe, or until I go to drive through Texas, or I go to Florida to do, to cook during the food and wine expo, because I realize, like, I'm back to being 14, sort of hiding around, behind bushes smoking joints again. But I'm actually really curious about something. Are you planning on bringing any of your events anywhere else other than New York? Are you
Well,
planning on?
it's funny that you should say that. So to your question about, digital, events.
Yeah,
So we tried a new experiment. We did a live stream. So, we've been asked to, go to other geographical areas, other
yeah,
markets. And we made a decision a couple of years ago to just focus on New York because we
right,
saw the opportunity of what this market could be.
right.
However, with events, it's hard to scale. It's and all of us have full-time jobs. So this is like an actual passion project.
Right.
So we did live streaming. So we did a watch party actually in Buffalo, and it went really well. I think there was about 70 something people attending that watch party.
That's amazing.
So kind of a mix between a live event and instead of just watching at home, you're watching with your friends. So, we're trying
Amazing.
to start that type of experimentation. So that was cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So we will look out for opportunities to attend events maybe in other geographical areas. I have to ask you, the Cannabis Media Council, tell me
Yeah.
what's the deal?
So that is outside of On The Revel. That is with Joyce Sonali from Big Rock and Sonoma Hills Farm, and Amy Dennison, formerly at Curaleaf and now Pheno. So they brought me on. They were the co-founders. They brought me on as president. And the whole purpose of this trade organization is to start creating national campaigns, PSAs, education around cannabis as an entire industry. So you
Right.
remember when Got Milk was for the dairy?
Of
We want to
course.
start doing that for cannabis,
Yep.
irrespective of brand or category. We
Yep.
think it's time that the cannabis industry as a whole starts moving forward.
It would be nice. I mean, it really would be. During the pandemic, I was very proud of the culinary industry and proud of how you know, my colleagues sort of battled and did what they had to do. Many of them to stay in business, to
Yeah.
some of them to try and stay in business, some of them to try and stay in the industry. But the one thing that I likened it to was, when 9/11 happened and I was in Colorado, we that you'll hear in the intro song I wrote and sung the intro song, and we talk about we put our heads down, we band together, you'd never know we're in the weeds. And that's sort of how I liken what happened during 9/11, when all the chefs sort of got together and we were raising money for Michael Lamonaco and Windows on the World. But the same thing happened during the pandemic, right, where really everyone was down and out and all the restaurants were closing and all of my colleagues were losing everything. And we sort of became one, and it was no longer being competitive and who's got a James Beard or a Michelin star. No one gave a shit. They just wanted to see everyone succeed. And I really hope that we get to a point in cannabis where it's a very similar model, where we're really just here, no matter your skin color, no matter your socioeconomic background, no matter a grower, a chef, someone with a UI, UX experience, no matter our experiences, that we can all be there to support one another. Because in truth, it's a fucking plant that saves lives, and it saved mine.
100%. It's that, trying to like get everyone in the collective kind of abundance mindset of,
Yeah.
being able to move forward collectively, supporting each other
Yeah.
and really trying to create some standards.
Yeah.
I know we've been all operating, at least in the States, intrastate. I think you guys are within intra-province.
Correct.
Being able to actually unify and come together, just like any other trade or any other industry, would be really fucking fantastic. So this is our attempt at that. Creating standard, like right now, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but it's very difficult to do any type of marketing, any type of
No, it's the same.
advertising.
It's the
Yeah.
same. Yeah, it's the same.
So
Yeah.
I think Amy Dennison is probably one of the foremost experts on navigating around the being creative about this. So we're trying to come up with some campaigns that hit outside of our echo chamber, right? Because a lot of
Right.
the times we're speaking to everyone, like
This,
everyone preaching to the
the
choir.
converted. You're already
Yeah,
speaking to the converted,
yeah.
right?
So we need
And
to hit the folks that are on the periphery or want to put their toe in, and that's what we're trying to do.
Kind Magazine had their Instagram profile. They were deplatformed, and
Yeah.
just this morning, with 10,000 plus followers. Now, it's happened to many of my friends, well, almost every single day, as a matter of fact. And it's a shame. We don't own anything when we post it. And I wish everyone would appreciate that. And quite frankly, today, would I be devastated if my Instagram were deleted? Yeah, I would be. I've worked really hard to get a real following of people who I engage with, yeah, I'd be hurt. I'd be devastated. But I don't rely, my income is not solely reliant on social media and or specifically Facebook and Instagram. And I think if people are, just like if they don't have a pandemic plan, but if they are reliant on that, I think it's very short-sighted. Thankfully, people like Kind Magazine, Josh Nagel, they're not solely reliant on that. They have communities that they own through or by way of, similar to On The Revel, similar through their newsletters or your online community, or those are communities you own. But it's really a shame to see people being shadow banned constantly and being deplatformed, and I talk about it ad nauseum. So listen, I really love what you're doing, and I can't wait to get my apron on at some point in time and be part of one of those events now that I actually
Yeah, I
have
would
my
love that.
US passport in my
Love that.
drawer upstairs. Yeah, I need to come out. I need to see all my friends and or cousins and brother. Anyways, so I will definitely make it out there. Thank you so much for doing this today. One thing that we talk about always on the show is mental health. I've struggled with mental health my whole life, and I always put it out there to you, to all of our listeners. If anyone is going through a tough time, if anyone's having some challenges, trust me when I tell you I am there currently. It's these are harder days than normal, but I am here. My DMs are always open, and I am here to be a great listener to you. Um, you know, to High Times, to Kind Magazine, thank you so much. I really love the opportunity to be a part of it. We can control one thing in our life, and we can do it every single day. We can buy a coffee for someone behind us. We can walk by someone and say good morning. We can ask someone how their day is. We can help people by simply being a good person. So the one thing we can control, fucking be a good human, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you all have a great day. And hey, let's be good people. Take care, everyone.